You're listening to By the Roots, and today's episode topic is crying. Okay, so Corinne, why do humans cry?
It's a combination of things. It's, when I think of me crying or when I'm actually watching other people cry, and then I have this feeling like I want to cry as well. I think people cry as a matter of some kind of a release.
And I'm hearing that you're saying sometimes you'll see someone else cry and that you'll cry. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like if I'm watching somebody else cry, then I just hone in on it. And then I feel like I want to cry too, or I'll just kind of, I might start crying a little bit.
Is that competitive crying? Are you crying to outcry them?
No, I think it's like I just feel really bad that somebody's in pain, Sometimes when I think about crying and, or other people crying, and it's usually because they're in some form of pain and it's like a means to an end to get through something. Crying is part of a process of getting through something or feeling through something from the beginning to the end.
So you don't feel that tears are purposeless?
I don't. And I know that there's most likely some, physical aspects or just even chemical aspects or a need for the brain in order to process something that has nothing to do with our awareness of being fully conscious.
You feel better after you cry?
Absolutely.
If you're in pain? Oh, like right away, or like you got to sit with it for a while?
I usually feel better. I feel if I've had a good cry, I feel like I've managed to work something out in some way. And it makes you wonder about why we have this ability, how some people are more prone to crying than others. I know people who I've never seen them cry and I've known them forever,
Male or female?
It's mostly male.
Is there an activity that maybe rather than crying, a thing that they do that almost like takes the place of crying?
I would have to assume perhaps, they have a different way of processing. And it kind of makes you wonder if you cry as an infant, because you need something. And so when you need to be fed or if you're cold, if you're uncomfortable, if your diaper needs to get changed, you're going to cry because instinctually it's how you manage to get the attention you need and to have those things tended to.
Well, but then why we continue crying? Like if we have a developed language system.
Right. It goes from being something that's a primal reaction in order to survive. That's probably, as an infant, you're not even aware of yourself even existing. Like intellectually being aware of like, I am here. Sure, maybe infants are having thoughts, and I'm not someone who's an expert who could get into that with some, clarity. But as a person who is an intellectual, in the sense I like to think about things and talk about things, and you wonder, where does crying fall into the schematic of all of that? Why do I cry? Do I need to cry? Is it a learned behavior? Or is it because I'm that much in tune with how I'm feeling or how I'm managing my own pain?
So it's like a coping. Well, so you said that with infants, we cry to have needs addressed. Do you think that even as adults, that crying is to help our needs be addressed?
Mm-hmm. I do. I think it's a personal thing for me. It usually happens in solitude, and it's a very self-soothing process. Sometimes I will have a reaction if I'm moved by something, or if I find something to be beautiful, or
so not just pain, beauty.
Yeah.
Which is like a positive movement, right?
Like an emotional state of just awe. Usually it's of other human beings and what they're able to do and how they treat one another.
I cry every time I see a baby. Every freaking time I see a baby, I cry.
Oh, that's not crazy. I just the other day, I'm getting to know my neighbors, and they have this baby. She's just over a year old, and I made her smile. And that made me feel special because I was just talking to her and saying, hi, and she looked up at me and she smiled. So it kind of
made validated for life.
Yeah, it's like I'm not some creepy old lady, trying to talk to this child, with this domineering American accent. No. So
she probably smiled because she's like, this person doesn't know how to talk.
Yeah, who is this person? She's goofy.
So wait, have you ever researched crying at all?
I've never researched crying.
So this is intuitive and life experience based.
It's intuitive and it's life experience. I think the only time I've actually had some kind of like, how do I do this research crying is when, and just as an actor and just to kind of throw that in there, is when you are
performance crying.
In a performance crying, but there's that, people will fake cry. But then there's...
So were you looking at how to real cry, or you were like...
Always. I will always... I have a toolbox, you can call it that, where I will tap into different aspects of what's going on there and of my life and my experience and the experience of others, and try to find things in there that are appropriate for allowing me to feel something. And it's just part of the art of crying. If there is such a thing.
Is it real crying if you're making yourself cry?
I think so, because there's a process going on within me. And
there's something universal about being in the moment as an actor, experiencing something as the character, but you're drawing on real life.
Yeah, I'm drawing. It's real life, and it's very, I'm very careful to make sure that I'm not going to be left in a state of like, wow, I really need to recover from this. Because chances are you might have to do it again and again and again. I've had to cry a lot with some of the projects that I've worked on. There's been some states of panic and fear and crying, and when you're in your darkest moment, that kind of thing. And and it's funny because I actually do feel better even when I'm working, and if it requires me to go there, I actually come out of it feeling better.
I was just saying that I get really tired if I'm crying for a role. If I put everything into it to make it like what I think of as the best, I'm super depleted afterward, which is not to say that I feel bad, but that I'm just like toast. Mm-hmm. So I've been lucky on film projects where I've cried for roles where there's space in between to switch angles or do another scene where it's also emotional. But when I've been on stage to perform something, it's like you're moving the people in the room. Like it feels really different, right? And so I feel like it's these ripples that go out and come back and can leave me like, I need a good amount of recovery space, like probably about an hour of recovery space to just kind of come back and feel like I could have a conversation or even drive.
Right.
Well, so do you cry when you're happy ever? You said beautiful things. So that's a kind of joy, but do you ever cry like happy cry or like laughter cry?
Oh, yeah. I remember when when Drew proposed to me, which was completely not even on my radar. It's like deep down inside, I wanted it to happen, but I wasn't going to force something like that to happen. I was just very happy with how we were together. And I was like, well, it'd be a wonderful thing if we could get married. And he proposed to me completely out of the blue. And I could not stop crying because I was just so surprised. And I never...
Like having a secret wish.
It was a secret wish. I never, it's just one of those things that I wanted to have in my life. And I didn't think it was ever going to be, it was never going to come to pass. And then it was presented to me in a very beautiful way, and now it's like 16 years later. That made me very, very happy. It's funny because people usually say the birth of their children will leave you in tears. And I can't say that I cried when my kids were born, it was like, I was very happy. I was overjoyed, but I wasn't brought to tears. The tears came as I started to see milestones, and I was just really fascinated and blown away with what they were able to do and how they were developing. And that made me emotional.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, I want to say there's a pride there, but it's like way beyond pride. It's this unbelievable, happy, proud, impressed, like you're beside yourself with seeing this person start to walk, start to talk, start to just start. It's all these new things. With children. So yeah. When I think about all of those milestones, lots of different moments where one of the kids would say something that just makes you laugh. Like they tell a joke successfully and you cry about it. Years later, you cry about their dorky joke that made you laugh. Oh, it was the first joke. They made me laugh.
or, and there's laughing, and then you're laughing so hard to the point of crying, which I've certainly experienced that. And I think you cry when you're laughing is because you're laughing in a situation maybe you shouldn't be laughing.
So you're trying to emotion.
You're secretly laughing. You're like trying to be quiet, and you can't help it. So then it kind of turns into your body reacts, and the next thing you know, you're like kind of crying because you're laughing so hard. There's
sometimes you hurt yourself and your eyes water, which is not really the same. So I guess as an adult, maybe I have cried when I've hurt myself, but not because I hurt myself, but like the hurting of myself physically made me cry, kind of a thing. Whereas when you're a kid, you get hurt and you're like sobbing. It's always your knees, right? You've always skinned a knee. Mm-hmm. And then I suddenly realized that like, this is terrible. I laugh until I cry when James hurts himself, but he's okay. Or when he shits himself. Once he was so sick with a stomach flu that he went to the bathroom, rinsed off, put on a pair of pants, and then it's terrible. What a terrible realization that I'm this awful person. See, I can't not laugh. I'm the worst person. And he's like, I shit myself. And he was so annoyed. He was so like angry. I just shit myself. Just a little. But I couldn't stop laughing and my eyes are pouring with tears, but it doesn't feel like emotional crying. It feels like a physical instigation. Like my face hurts because I'm smiling too hard. And it's because I'm awful. I'm crying out of self-pity because I'm such a bad person. Do you think that there is an authority that could state why humans cry?
Yeah, I'm sure there must be somebody who's like an expert on the physiological aspects of crying.
So there are, quote, experts. And although there are many people who specialize in it, none of them to date are in unity with their reason why humans cry. Right? There are people who spend a lot of time like putting together study groups, testing their theories about crying, and then, scientific lab taking tears and looking at like what are tears made out of? It's not just water and salt. If you go and you chop onions and it makes you cry, those tears are completely different tears than if you've watched a movie that has emotionally moved you and you cry. So the Schindler List tears are not onion tears.
Yeah.
And the emotional tears, although I did not find in any of my research that the chemical composition between like a happy tear or a sad tear or a proud tear or, like any of those categories, I didn't see anything right out of the gate. But I did see that supposedly emotional tears are filled with more proteins and are therefore more viscous and more like visible. They're like a blob, fat tears, right? The round tears that hold themselves together and they're not as runny and they travel down the face slower than if you just have lubricating tears that are reacting to protect your eyes from an outside stimulus, a physical stimulus. So completely different tears that respond differently and basically look like cartoon tears in comparison to just the lubricating tear.
Really?
So we don't know why we cry. You and I seem to know why we cry.
Yeah.
But we don't know why we cry.
Grand we, huh?
Interestingly, you want to know who seems the most invested in careers in studying tears are men. Every person cited in the articles that I read, I believe they were all male representatives of specialists in crying. One of the first quotes that I read about why we cry is Darwin, who literally said that they're purposeless. I don't believe that he was correct about that. So moving on quickly from that, there, I guess, are more religious passages about, the heart being connected to tears, and that it's like expressions of the heart leak out of the eyes because the heart is degrading and oozing, or that the heart creates so much heat and passion with emotion that it literally causes condensation to build up in the head, which then has to run out the eyes.
That sounds very Victorian.
Right. So that's an older one. That's definitely an older one. But then more modern-ish ones. One of them was detox. It's almost like sweat. To have a good cry is like to detox from some sort of toxins in your system, whether your toxins are your emotions or chemicals that are built up from having these emotions, or just literal metal toxicity. I don't know. It was just a general toxicity, expelling toxicity. Okay. All right. So basically your tears are like gross armpit sweat pouring from your big baby blues. What was another one? Tears are one of the leading modern authorities on the topic believes it to be a heavily a social cue, that it's like an outward expression of our inability to cope. It's a cry for help. If we cry, we are like an infant saying, I can't cope, and now I can't deny it. Here are my tears. I can't lie to myself. And then it says to someone else, help. Help with whatever this is. I'm not able to bear it on my own. It's overwhelming. And that's why they said, oh, well, that would make sense evolutionarily, like why there are more protein in the tears that are emotional tears, because they stay on the face longer and they're larger. It's like a little light, literally it's reflective. It's calling attention. But like you said, so often lots of us don't want to cry around people. We actually want to cry in private. I mean, I read that and I went, oh, that makes some amount of sense to me, but I don't think it's really on the money necessarily, at least not completely on the money. One study even suggested that tears probably have a chemical component that de-escalates social situations. That basically, if a woman is crying, because I guess this was more of a like male versus female kind of study, that if a woman cries, it dampens the male sexual arousal in a heterosexual situation, at least. I don't know how much more you could dampen sexuality in a non-heterosexual situation between a man and woman. That was not part of the study.
Oh, why did you have to go ahead and start crying? Why?
Why? But that more importantly, the point being that it decreases aggression in others. So if there's someone in the room crying, the aggression at that person, it'll like de-escalate a situation. And for reasons unknown to me, because I did not read the actual report on this, just, kind of quotes regarding the release of the report, that it is, again, a social thing. And that it's not just that we've been conditioned to not pick on someone who's crying, but that there's a chemical component that is almost like a pheromone that gives us directions. Like, be gentle. Things aren't going so well. Back off. And I think all of that is really interesting, but doesn't necessarily speak to either your or my personal experience with our own crying. Mm-hmm. And I mean, doesn't even begin to breach the topic of, well, if a majority of humans do cry, why do some of us not cry? And then, spinning off into, is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it societal? Is it a trauma? Is it a physical trauma? How many humans are born that literally can't cry? I have no idea.
I'm sure. I mean, they're out there. It's just how you're programmed somehow at birth. I don't know.
But then I wonder, neurologically speaking, what's the neurology around that? So I guess although there is no consensus about why humans cry, I think that when you talk to just about anyone, it is some kind of a release. that there's like a buildup of even physical tension in the body, but definitely like emotional tension. And then crying is a release. Interestingly, there were 2 studies that were the exact same studies, except for one portion of collecting the information. It was basically like send a group of people to a sad movie and measure their mood going in. How do you measure a person's mood? I don't know. Maybe you just ask them honestly how they feel. I don't know. But so that's how they disclosed the study. But so I don't know the specifics on that. So that gets a little squirrely. But basically, send a group of people into the theater, ask them how they're feeling when they go in. And then as soon as they come out, ask them how they're feeling. The people who cried during the movie did not feel good. So this one guy, because it was a guy, says, crying does not help. It makes people feel terrible, basically. The conclusion is crying makes people feel bad. Avoid crying. And then someone else did the exact same experiment, send a group of people in, monitor how they're feeling beforehand. And then after they go to the movie, I believe they said 90 minutes later, they canvassed and said, how are you doing? And the people who had cried felt better than when they went in. And the people who hadn't cried did not feel as good as when they went into the movie. The thing about getting statistical information that really gets to me, that I think is reflected here, is did they send couples in? So is it like, one half of the couple who's been crying and one half hasn't, and now the person who didn't cry has had to deal with this person that's been sobbing the whole time, and so they're not feeling good? Do they know if these people have glucose issues? Are there secondary health issues that make it so that they need a snack, so they're not feeling as happy? Like, there's a lot of unknown information here on the structure of the study, but a very loose study of just basically canvassing people who saw a sad movie. The conclusion of the first one is crying makes you feel bad. And the conclusion of the second one, after they asked them, after an hour after the movie had concluded, hey, how do you feel now? I feel so good. I feel so much better. Had a good cry. That's you and I both say, have a good cry. It's a good cry. But if it's so good, do we go to have it alone because we want it all to ourselves? Or because it's so personal, or because we're embarrassed, or it's because we're feeling vulnerable, or because we know we look like a bunch of snotty people when we do it? When I cry, my nose runs about 160% more than my eyes do.
Mine too, actually. And that's just the way it is.
Yep. So lots of snot. It's not like cute, big crocodile tears. It's like cute, big bubbles of snot, plus some tears. But I got to wonder. I've cried about things, and it is infectious, where James has started to cry, but then I actually get upset with him and I say, like, I need you to be here for me and not suddenly all of us fall apart and just be crying. Stand your ground, sir. Let me cry. Oh, and it's weird because there have been moments where it felt almost like competitive tears, and moments also where it just felt like empathy tears, where, you're in it together, or it's so hard to see someone in pain and you can't do anything. But weirdly, there's a distinction there too. So yeah, I asked you because apparently we don't know. And I wanted to hear from you before I informed you.
Oh, no.
Everything that sounded, you're so spot on with all of it. With as much information as we have, you already know. You already intuitively know what all of these studies have now supported.
Yeah.
I did forget to ask you something, though. Has anyone ever tried to make you cry? Like to out you or shame you or...
Yeah. It's usually the people that you love and care about the most that, as an adult, will say or do something specifically to upset you, to get a rise out of you, which can be so infuriating. It might lead to tears. And then there were situations as a kid, enduring bullying to the extent where you're driven to tears, and those are or just me being out in public and then being cornered and having something done to me that was so profound, being something happened to me in public where I was driven to tears, but it also made me very physically ill. Yeah, there are people out there that will go out of their way to inflict pain. And if your result is crying, then either they may feel like they've gone too far, or they may feel like it's mission accomplished. And it's unfortunate. But yeah, that's happened to me. And I don't have any shame in how I've reacted. It's just made me very sensitive to how other people handle things and how other people are enduring their emotional pain. And when it's brought on to them by another individual, that individual's mission being solely to make another person cry, I'm very sensitive. I'm very sensitive to that. And I see it happen all the time. I think collectively, most people are not happy when they're watching another person bring another person down and to the point of where they're in tears. It's a horrible thing to do with another human being. Yet there are people that are out there that will do it willingly. And then when they feel like they've accomplished what they've needed to accomplish, they will wear it as a gold star on their lapel, if you want to call it that. And then they take it a step further. They might just share that information, or they might just post that information. And then what makes it worse, then they have people that actually give in and support it and honor it and applaud it. And then that's just, it's the world that we live in. But I honestly, I feel like those individuals are outnumbered. I really believe that by the good people in the world.
Don't force people to tears, people. Don't do
that. You do that, then, it says a lot about you. It's certainly, you're not a person that can be trusted.
Well, the number one word that comes to mind is someone who's bullying. And I mean, I still don't know why bully feels like such a just kind of child term, like, a not truly hurtful, like sticks and stones. But bullying isn't just something in the schoolyard. It's not innocent. It's a bad behavior that is learned and then applauded. People who are bullies have found more success degrading other people than they have found with other methods. I had a financial meeting once where it was a really serious meeting. Got together with a school board and said, there's some bullying going on in this room with these adults. We were on a payment program for a private school. So we didn't pay as much as a full tuition. There was some kind of grant program where it was like offset, where they allow families that aren't as, well-to-do as other families on this campus, right? But then they continually request more money. Yes, keep asking. That's fine. If I have it, I'll give it. I'm going to try to be an honest person. But what happened was they were disclosing private information about other families to us, which is illegal. So privacy disclose, I could not do anything about it as far as like, I can't sue them for disclosing this information to me, but that family that they just told me about totally could. And so I had this meeting and said, I don't like you trying to lord things over me. It's not a good tactic. Number one, I don't respect it. And number two, this is illegal.
Yeah, it is.
And I've looked into it. And I think that one, I need to state my case, which is stop bullying me. And two, don't be doing this unethical stuff because you're going to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. And a woman was attending the meeting that was supposed to be like a moderator, was also a parent at the school, not in a super official capacity at the office. So it wasn't the financial officer. The financial officer was a male, white male. This moderator is a white female. I was very factual. I didn't raise my voice. I did not get emotional because I felt like, okay, I just need to present everything as facts, cold facts. I'm not going to get impassioned about it. I'm just going to say, this is something that occurred. This is the legal terminology around how this could be construed if that information gets out. And, I don't agree with your practices and I feel bullied in this scenario. And she picked up that I use the word feel, given that this person is a therapist.
Okay.
And she came back at me hard and strong with, these are very big words. These are very hefty words, Nicole. These allegations are very big. And I'm like, I'm stating what my experience was. I've already told you I cannot take legal action based on this experience, but that someone can. So I am warning you. I'm not threatening you. I'm warning you. I'm not threatening. I'm warning. Reiterated. And she says, well, it's a very big deal. You need to stop talking and tell us how you feel. And she just started to just try to shake the room and create this emotional pressure. And unfortunately, I did spring a leak. I'd been very calm the whole time, but My unfortunate history is my father committed suicide numbers of years ago. And I found out afterward that he probably committed suicide because he didn't leave a note. So it's just collecting facts after the event, that he wasn't able to make ends meet financially. And he was definitely under the impression that he needed to be the provider, and that he couldn't provide. And it really upset him, and he was depressed about it. And so he took his own life. I was so angry at that woman. I was so angry in that moment for her trying to push me to be emotional when I don't need to be emotional in that scenario. I'm not feeling emotional about it. I'm telling you, your behavior is wrong. Your practices are wrong. Not only are they wrong according to my ethics and my morals, they're also wrong legally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So that's all I'm bringing to the table here. And then this heartless, if I may, just goes, there's something in there. She wouldn't be coming here, like women are emotional. Here she is, a woman who's a trained therapist sitting across this desk with her arms folded at me, trying to look for a trigger, trying to look for an emotional trigger so that I am not the man in the room. Because in that moment, I was the man in that scenario. I had caught this financial officer out for being a big old bully, which is what he was, a big old bully. And then she turned out to be an even worse bully because she wanted blood. She wanted blood from me. And I started crying and I said, thanks a ton. Yes, I have an emotional, personal relationship with finances because I lost a parent over finances. And I'm crying about that. You're not making me cry. I'm not crying about you or this situation. I'm crying because I had an experience that is about the topic of finances.
Yeah, that's it.
You don't get to have that. You don't get to lord that over me. Shame on you.
Yeah. Man, I just, I'm really sorry that happened. Being angry is a very, I think, normal response, and holding your ground, good for you, and not to let people walk on you just because they're in some perceived position of authority. They think that they can throw their weight around and stir the pot in honor or just in the guise of, I'm just doing my job and I'm doing it well because I'm making another person feel bad about their situation.
It was so illogical how she did it too. Like I was upset that there was, that trigger doesn't go away. I think anybody could reach that trigger. Just on the bus, somebody could find that trigger in me because it's such a, it's like a gaping wound. It's just there. It's not, I don't think it'll ever go away. My parent took his life and it was mysterious and it was shocking. And there's going to be like all kinds of turmoil around that. And for me, it's inseparable from money and how it can drive a person to become a lifeless entity. Literally take a life or just make a person empty. So I was angry that she so illogically could push me that hard, because all she did was just reiterate the question. Like, we need to know how you feel. We need to know how you feel. And I kept saying, you don't need to know how I feel. Why do you need to know how I feel? Like, this isn't a thing. This isn't a conversation about people's feelings here. And then I cried and her body language was like, there it is. I won. Her body language was so, well, I think this meeting is adjourned, that kind of a thing. I don't know how that changed anything that had already happened. I don't feel that it did, but she obviously felt like if she could make me cry, it somehow discounted the seriousness of my supposed accusations. I don't know. And so I want to circle back to, so me crying de-escalated the situation, but it was because she felt like she had won something. From all I could tell, she felt like she got me. Ha! Got you, Nicole. You're the one crying now. What? I don't. I feel like in that scenario, it was manipulation. She got me to cry, and then she was happy that she had outright hurt me, and that de-escalated things because they felt like they won. But I keep thinking about that study that suggested that tears somehow de-escalate situations and reduce aggression. Thanks for tuning in to By the Roots with hosts Nicole Berry and Corinne Meadors. Music by Mim Paquin.